What's up, everyone? I'm back today with another video, but this time I'm going to be looking at my top 7 candidates for a breakout year in this year's fantasy season. So, just a couple things before we get into it. Keep in mind that this is going to be a PPR format, so that'll be pretty apparent with some of these players. And then at the same time, in terms of how I'm going down this list, there's no real order. The only thing that you'll notice is that it's in descending order of overall rank. So keep that in mind. But other than that, let's get it going. I'm going to try and keep this to a brief video, about 10-15 minutes, so it shouldn't be too long. The first guy on my list is the Jets running back Bilal Powell. So first of all, let's look at his rankings, and this is according to ESPN PPR. But he's ranked as the 18th overall running back, and then the 46th overall player. And some might say that this is right around where he belongs, but I honestly have pretty high expectations of him, especially if Matt Forte uh, gets hurt at some point during the season, which I think is quite possible considering all the wear and tear that he has. You kind of saw that towards the end of last season, and Bilal Powell shined during that point in time. Those last couple 2-3 weeks, outside of Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, this guy was up there in terms of top running backs. So in my opinion, what's going to happen is that they might start out with the share of the backfield, but I've read reports that say Bilal Powell is going to be the focal point of that running attack. And as the season progresses, I think he'll inherit more of the responsibilities with that role. He's an excellent PPR option. He can catch. Um, he's also a very good runner. And with all those things combined, I do believe a ranking of around 15 should be something more accurate for him, but he has the potential to be a top 10 guy. And in terms of potential, that's where I see him as a breakout player. So the next guy on my list is Ty Montgomery of the Green Bay Packers. And again, looking at his rankings, he's actually right behind Bilal Powell as the 19th ranked running back and then as the 51st player overall. So in my personal running back rankings, again, I have him inside the top 15 for PPR uh, leagues. And let me go into that a little bit more and tell you why even that might be too low. Because, first of all, he's playing with Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay offense. So that's automatically a huge plus. They've got Jordy Nelson, they've got Devontae Adams, Cobb, Martellus Bennett, and in my opinion, that's going to free up a lot of room for that running game. Also, Montgomery comes from that wide receiver to running back transition, so he has the potential to go for like a 600 combo in terms of rushing yards and then maybe even receiving yards, something like that. Some people are worried that he might lose some of the backfield time because the Packers drafted 3 freaking running backs in this year's college draft. But what I've heard from reports coming out of the Packers camp is that Montgomery is still the favorite guy. He's still the lead guy. And to me, that makes sense. He's been there longer. He has more of the experience with Rodgers, more of that rapport, and he's more comfortable with the system. He knows what they expect of him. So, with all those things considered, um, I definitely like him to be a top 15 guy, but he has breakout potential. You saw what he did against some of his opponents last year. I know it was the Bears where he racked up some huge games, but um, you saw him figure it out towards the end of the season. And I expect more of those games, but maybe a little bit more balanced where he's putting up consistently 15 to 20 points combined rushing and receiving. Moving down the list, you'll see that we have our first receiver here, and this is a guy, Pierre Garcon, that I really like in terms of where he's going alone, just on his value currently. He obviously made the transition this year from Washington to San Fran. And in terms of ESPN rankings, he's the 28th receiver overall and the 55th player overall. From what I've seen, he actually goes, lower than this. Usually makes it after the 55th pick, and I've seen that pretty consistently. He's gone towards the 65th, the 70th pick overall, and I think that's probably a combination of people doubting him in terms of, his age and just the overall situation in San Fran. And maybe I'll alleviate some of those concerns because, in my eyes, I like the situation he's going in San Fran. He's the unquestioned number one guy over there. He's going to be reunited with Kyle Shanahan from his Washington days, where when they were together, he had some of his most productive seasons. Now, Brian Hoyer is going to be quarterbacking that team, but he's shown that he's capable to get the ball to his number one guys back in his Houston days when DeAndre Hopkins had his breakout year. So, from those things alone, and the fact that San Fran, you know, um, made Pierre Garcon as their top wide receiver target in free agency, I think he's going to have a lot of targets thrown his way. There's not too many other targets in San Fran offensively, to be honest. So he's again on from that perspective the favorite. Um, in my opinion, he should at least be around the wide receiver 20 mark. Um, and this is another guy that I'm getting more and more fond of as it's getting closer to the start of the season. And in terms of potential, I do think he has potential of a top 15 season. And in terms of receivers, at least, that's pretty impressive because the receivers are so deep in PPR leagues. So keep that in mind when you're drafting and when it gets into those lower picks as a guy that has this breakout potential. And continuing down our list, the next guy that I have and that I'm actually very high on is Tyreek Hill. So you see, according to ESPN, he's ranked as their wide receiver 30. And then he has an overall rank of the 60th player. So some of the reasons why I think having him this low is just absurd is that, he showed last year that even as a rookie, he could handle this NFL thing. He excelled as a kick and punt returner. And then on top of that, he showed flashes in the receiving game. So with another year of experience, he's only going to get better. Second of all, you've got Jeremy Maclin leaving, who was the top receiver in Kansas City. So those targets are going to get split. In my opinion, they get split between Kelsey and between Tyreek Hill. Also, Tyreek Hill is still young, so he doesn't have really injury concerns. He doesn't have those wear and tear issues. And especially in terms of how your league is set up, you might be getting those bonuses from his punt return and kick return touchdowns, hopefully, if they stay on the same level as they did his rookie year. So that's just a double. And no doubt he'll get more involved in the passing game. Now, it'll be interesting to monitor that quarterback situation, but he proved that he can be an offensive weapon even when Nick Foles was quarterbacking the Chiefs for a while last year. You look at some of his highlights and you see what he can do not only in the receiving game, but they use him as a kind of an end around option, as a runner sometimes, and as a um, punt returner, a kick returner. So this guy is, in all means of the word, a triple threat. He can be viable to go off in any um, point in the game and in any phase of the game. So that's why I love this guy. I would say he's no doubt a top 15 wide receiver, and that alone would put him in my list of breakout candidates, especially if you consider that right now he's listed as a wide receiver 30. Moving right along, you'll see my next guy is Martavis Bryant of the Steelers. Right now, he is being ranked as the 32nd overall receiver and the 67th player overall. Now, I think maybe the reason he's so low is a combination of things. First of all, obviously he missed all of last year, but also he does have those um, staying on the field issues, and there's no guarantee that he'll be there for all 16 games. And I don't mean because of an injury, but I do mean I don't know if he'll get in trouble outside of the NFL field. But we'll see. In terms of skill and potential and production, this guy has to be a top 15 receiver, no doubt. And let me go back about 2 years where there were certain points in time where Martavis Bryant was outplaying Antonio Brown. And let me say that again because maybe it didn't sink in. Bryant was outplaying Antonio Brown when they were both on the field. To me, that's crazy. Brown is ranked as the number one guy unquestionably in all types of formats. And the fact that Bryant was rivaling him at one point should speak volumes. Now, I know that that Steeler offense is stacked. You've got Antonio Brown, you've got Le'Veon Bell, who are already favorite targets of Big Ben. But it's been evident before when Bryant was involved that he was also a focal point in that offense. And he'll get back targets, no doubt, in my opinion, when he rejoins the team. He's not only used as a receiving threat, but he's also got the speed for some of those end around trick plays. I really do like the wrinkles in the Pittsburgh offense. They're very creative in terms of using their playmakers, and I think Martavis Bryant will be one of those guys. Like I said, he's a top 15 receiver, no doubt. And if he stays on the field for 16 games, maybe he'll be having some adjustment issues with the first couple of games just to get the rust off. But after that, I envision him not only be a top 15 guy, but maybe even sneak in the top 10 rankings. So from that perspective, I feel very confident in taking Martavius Bryant with an earlier pick than this. I've seen him going earlier on, and that should be an indication that other people also feel strongly about this guy. The next guy on our list is quarterback Jameis Winston. As you can tell, he's the first non-running back, non-receiver to be listed. But as of right now, he's ranked as 12th on the quarterback scale and overall is the 116th best player. Now, maybe I don't have an issue of his overall ranking because I personally do value running backs and receivers and maybe even tight ends more than quarterbacks. But as far as where he's going, I think he's been tremendously underranked for his potential because if you ask me, pick one guy that you would select as your big time breakout guy, as your solo breakout guy, and that can have a potential MVP year that no one is talking about, I point to Jameis Winston. And I do so because look at last year. The Bucks turned it around. They had a 9-7 season. Mike Evans had his breakout year. Jameis Winston continued to get better as a passer. And now on top of that, the Bucks had Deshaun Jackson and OJ Howard. Now let me get into Deshaun Jackson first. That guy is viable for, getting reeling in those bombs of throws at any point. I think that'll help Winston in his long game. Um, and then having OJ Howard, that helps having, that security blanket there and helps in the blocking game even more so. So I think that offense will continue to grow. And Winston is, he's that dual threat quarterback that you love. He's got the running capabilities, but he's also a good, solid passer. And he has a nose for the end zone. He can evade guys, and he's got that speed and the running ability. Like I said, I view him in terms of comparison as a young Cam Newton. He's obviously healthier. I think he has more weapons offensively than Cam Newton has ever had. And for me, that's a reason to feel very comfortable with Winston. I personally have him in my quarterback rankings around the 10 mark, but when it's all said and done, if everything does come into fruition with him, I see him as a top five quarterback. So feel confident in having Jameis Winston as your starter, and I think you'll be rewarded quite nicely. So the last guy on my list is none other than Green Bay tight end Martellus Bennett. And he was a big name in this year's free agency, and especially where he landed because he's going with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and that's after coming off a Super Bowl victory with the Patriots and Tom Brady. So talk about being spoiled, but man, the rich get richer, I guess. The thing with Martellus Bennett here is that he's ranked as the number 11 tight end overall, and then the number 120th player overall. Now, I think this is crazy, especially in the tight end ranking alone, because some of the guys that he's being listed behind I find very questionable. Look at some of the results he had last year when Gronk was hurt, and even when Gronk was still on the field, he had some multi-touchdown games, and he was the focal point of that New England offense. So that should tell you if Brady felt comfortable with him, Rodgers sure as hell will. That's a high octane offense in Green Bay, and I think Randall Cobb is becoming out of favor in that offense, so someone will have to take those targets, and I surely think Bennett will have a big role, especially because they made him their top free agent acquisition on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I personally have Martellus Bennett in my top five for tight ends, and that alone should be an indicator to anyone that he is a breakout candidate. For me, anytime you finish top five in your respective category, you can be considered a breakout guy, especially if you've been ranked at the start of the season as the 11th overall guy in that position. So I would say feel pretty comfortable with having Martellus Bennett as your starting tight end. Now, he'll go later on, so maybe you can wait a little bit and pick him in later rounds, and you can come out looking real nice after that. So keep that in mind. And with that, that concludes my list. And as always, give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys thought of my list of breakout guys. Was there someone that I missed? Was there someone that you don't agree with? Um, was there guys on there that you're completely 100% on board with? And would you like me, to make a longer list of these guys and post that later on? So let me know what you guys think. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.